Well, good morning again. Today is the first Sunday in the season that we call Epiphany. And Epiphany is often defined by most people as a sudden flash of insight, something new that kind of comes into our minds and we perceive. But in the church, Epiphany is a season. And it's defined as God being made known to all peoples as represented by the Magi who came to Bethlehem to find the baby. These wise men from the east who followed a star that they had not seen before. Now, we know little about these wise men, these Magi. We often think of them as three wise men, though the Bible doesn't give a number. It could have been 10 of them. But scholars do now tell us some things that we didn't know before about the Magi, some things that we ought to know to give it a little bit of context. We know that though they were not Jews, they were monotheists, meaning they, like the Jewish people, believed in one divine God. And they were skilled in astrology, which led them to observe the stars and then to make interpretations based on what they saw. And during that time, we now know there was a widespread expectation of a coming king, a deliverer who would come from Judea. So these Magi, these wise men who likely came from Parthia, interpreted the star that they saw as signaling something holy and unique and divine, quite possibly this new king that was to come from Judea. So all of that gives us the context for this season of Epiphany, that Jesus' divinity was made known not just to his own Jewish people, but to the Gentiles and people far outside of the Jewish faith. Now, this past week, I had my own kind of epiphany moment, which was both about this unique season of Epiphany, but it was also kind of a flash of insight, something new that I had never really thought about. And in this epiphany that I had, I realized something about myself, something that most people, I think, would admit to. So I've come to see that in life, I expect things to be a certain way, a way that makes sense to me, a way that seems right and good and logical to me. I think most of us operate this way. So for example, when I go into a restaurant, I expect things to be a specific way. I expect the restaurant to be clean, I expect the service to be of a high quality, and I expect the food to be good, right? And when I go into a hotel, I expect the hotel to look a particular way, to be clean, to be spacious, to provide certain amenities. And we all do this. We expect a store to be laid out in a logical manner, to be well stocked, to be clean. We expect the people who serve us out in public in any field to be groomed and well kept and polite and helpful. Now, my point is that I have expectations about everything that I encounter in life. I expect people to live in a certain way, to behave in a certain way, and to believe in certain things. And I set those expectations very high, often. And my epiphany, this flash of insight that I gained this past week, is the realization that what I expect in life, these high expectations that I hold, may not be at all what God expects. What I value, I think, is not often what God most values. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. I've always thought that I'm a logical person, that my thoughts and worldview are rational. I've always thought that how I expect things to operate in the world is the way that things ought to operate in the world. But then the epiphany this part of the book of Matthew, the Epiphany hits me. I read about these magi in the book of Matthew, these wise men from the east who followed a star into something unknown. These men who followed a hunch, an unfounded belief that something important needed to be found and needed to be seen and needed to be known. And I have to believe that what they expected to find was a king, someone majestic, someone of dignity and nobility. So it must have been confounding to them when, upon arriving in Jerusalem, no one else seemed to know about the birth of this king. King Herod didn't appear to know anything about it. But after talking with his chief priest, he sent the Magi then on to Bethlehem. And so they followed that star to Bethlehem and there found the baby. But I have to wonder if what they found in Bethlehem was what they expected to find at all. Because I have to believe that these wise men expected to find a baby surrounded by royalty, a baby wrapped in the finest linens, a baby sleeping in some distinguished, elegant setting. But that's not what they found at all. They found two scared young parents and a newborn baby. They found that baby in a manger in a stable surrounded by the smell of cows and goats and animal waste. It was probably cold and uninviting, anything but what they expected to find. And I find this astonishing, that God chose to come into the world, into human existence in the lowest, most uninviting of ways. This stable would have likely been the bottom floor of a house that people lived in. So even the physical location of Jesus' birth was at the lowest possible level, beneath everyone living above it. And God chose to come into the world in that low place amidst animals and straw, in the middle of the dark night, in the middle of anxiety, in the middle of despair. That's how God chose to come into humanity. And so I'm astounded by this God who doesn't abide by human expectations. And I'm also struck by this notion that what we people expect in life is not typically what we get. I now believe that an epiphany is not just an instant of new knowledge. It's not just a flash of new insight. Epiphany is a journey of letting go of your expectations about God, your expectations about life. When I view the world through my own lens, I expect certain things. And most often what I expect is not what matters to God. What matters to God is finding value and beauty in unexpected places and in unexpected people. We are called to find the goodness and the God-given value in everybody. In the face of the addict, in the face of the homeless, in the face of the unkept, in the face of the angry and the bitter, in the face of the poor, in the face of the flawed, in the face of the broken. My epiphany is that I need to let go of what I think is acceptable and good and worthy. We all need to let go of these preconceived notions that we have of worthiness in life. Because the baby that those magi found in Bethlehem wasn't what anyone would call worthy. God came into the world in a place that most of us would tend to avoid. And that should continue to astound us and to challenge us to find God in those unexpected places that we would most likely want to avoid. sometimes I'm embarrassed to admit how much I focus on the way I think life ought to be and how I think life ought to unfold and how I believe that people ought to behave. And I know that God doesn't act in the way that people do. God does unexpected things, and God uses broken things and broken people because imperfect, flawed, broken things show what God can do. They show the power of God to heal, to bring wholeness, and to love unconditionally. So may we continue to believe in that type of God, that world-flipping, unexpected God who is found in those unexpected, broken places of life. Amen.